Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at our Fireside Chat horror stories. My name is Mark Negri, aka Count Markula. I will be the moderator for today's campfire storytelling. For those of you not yet familiar with CTIconnect, we are a premier distributor of fixed wireless equipment. We have a couple of centrally located fulfillment centers and a wealth of in-house expertise. We pride ourselves on serving our family of customers and partners with a new level of care and respect, delivering real solutions, custom services, high value, and future-proof reliability. Today's Fireside Chat is all about hearing the horror stories from the field. We are bringing a new way to hear about network issues and solutions in an informal and spooky manner. Our ghouls and goblins today are Jeff Broadwick, our internal expert and senior sales executive. Jeff and I make up a problem-solving team to help address customer connectivity issues. Also joining us today is Jason Mees from Transector and Chris Catania, a very experienced consultant. Make no bones about it, they both have a wealth of knowledge and will be in the electric chair today, ready to address the horrors we hear. So let's get the party started. Jeff, I'm passing the torch to you.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for everyone for joining us today. We wanted to take you away from your regular webinar format and get you some great information in a fun setting. I'm amazed Mark managed to stick with one accent. We got story submissions from you, our audience, and invited a couple of experts, and actually one expert. We tried to find another one, but we only had Catania available, so be gentle. Who could join us, we thought could best lend their knowledge and experience to shed some light on how you can avoid the types of pitfalls we'll be hearing about today. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat window. We have time at the end, we'll answer them or we'll reach out to you after the program. And if some people want to hang out a little bit longer, we can hang out a little bit longer. Chris and Jason, could you take a minute to introduce yourselves, please? Chris.
Sure. My name is Chris Catania, previously with Cambium Networks, been in the industry for about 4 or 5 years now. Recently, I've been consulting with and managing everyone from managed service providers to independent WISP operators.
GRU is referring to my secret identity as Superman, or I'm sorry, as Jason Mees. As Jason Mees, I'm a 17-year director of sales at Transector. And in my secret identity, I don't have superpowers, but I do save the day on a regular basis, providing power and signal integrity solutions. We do save the day one surge protector at a time. Up, up, and away!
I like that. Okay. Well, guys, let's hear our first horror story. I'm on pins and needles.
Thank you, Guru. So our first story today is entitled A Steep, Scary Drop. Back in April 2011, Frederick Krueger started working for a rural wisp. Shortly after, he received notification from the owners of the company that they were looking at purchasing a neighboring wisp. Here's his story. Our company owners met with the other ISP's network administrator, looked at the hardware, visited a couple of tower sites, and got a rough number of subscribers. Then we were informed the purchase was moving forward, and we were taking over their network admin and would need to upgrade the equipment. You see, we knew they were using first generation equipment. On the 1st of July 2011, just a couple of months after I started working there, we had the phone calls from the purchase company rolled into our office at exactly 8:30 a.m. The phone started ringing off the hook, and they did not stop for 8 months. In the network, they had wireless equipment in 2 gigahertz and 9 megahertz. Their 900 megahertz was used for less than 1 mile line of sight applications. Their 2 gigahertz was used for long distances, upwards of 2 miles per connection. If a customer was running too fast, they would misalign their antenna to get them to the lower data rate. And I'm sorry, my voice is cracking. I did not take my testosterone injection. Anyway, so they had a lower speed, and their idea of traffic shaping was satanic. Following the acquisition, it did not take long for us to realize that half of their customers were not being billed. Most customers bought the equipment and were installed on a 30-day package, but then forgotten all about and never added to the billing system. So we had to find out who was paying and who wasn't. On a side note, if you were a friend of the previous owner, you got free internet. When this saga started, I'd only been working in the virus industry for 3 months. There was one tower site that I had to check out. It was up on the side of a steep hill. I had to park my truck and walk another 50 yards up an incline to a 40-foot TV tower. At the bottom was a black garbage can. They had drilled holes into the ventilation and used as an enclosure. Me being very new at climbing in this industry, I called the previous owner and said, "Hey, I got to get up this tower, and the thing looks a little wobbly." He said, "I would not swing on it like an ape, but I climbed to the top of it less than a month ago." This is a very long story. This is more reading than I've done in centuries. Anyway, so I started climbing up, maybe 20 feet up. The tower started leaning back. I got scared, then I climbed down. As soon as I got to the ground, I looked at the base of the tower, which was sitting on a plate. It was secured with nails instead of screws. And I never recommend using nails, and never stakes. During this period, most of the customers calling said they had been trying to get in touch with the company for 3 months, and their internet wasn't working. Of course, they demanded we get it fixed. So for 8 months, we worked to upgrade towers and replace equipment. We did alignments, we installed traffic shaping, and dealt with bizarre issues. For instance, we had to rewire a bunch of houses where they had used Cat 3 cable instead of Cat 5. Furthermore, they installed a radio on one house and then ran a 400-foot cable underground to a neighbor's house to give them service. To make matters worse, I realized that the grounding we had in place was nowhere near what we needed because we would still lose equipment. We had a tower that had been struck by lightning 7 times. 7 times! We were trying to figure out why it would get hit by so many lightning strikes. And then we finally learned that the electric was running directly onto the tower. And there was no grounding. Today, we spend money on grounding, and it seems to really help. As we got larger, we upgraded our equipment and replaced our entry-level units. And I would much rather spend the money to make sure it's protected. All in all, my first year in the wireless industry was a top-level horror show. And I would much rather spend money to make sure it was protected. And I think I must have missed that one line, but does not matter. But honestly, it got me to the point where I can troubleshoot darn near anything. Even though today, many years later, there are more internet options for locals, we retain our customers because they are happy with our service. Gru?
Thank you, Mark. That's quite a story. Let's see. There's several topics we can discuss about this. WISP acquisition, lightning and grounding, cabling, enclosures. Doesn't everybody use a trash can with holes drilled in it? Radio planning, billing, and revenue assurance. Chris, let's go ahead and start with you. Lots of WISP are considering acquisitions today. What do you recommend that they look at prior to the purchase?
Well, I mean, in this case, it sounds like they did zero due diligence. You know, when you're looking at an acquisition, you should be inspecting the tower sites. And if you show up and there's a trash can, and at least they had the foresight for what longevity to drill holes in it for ventilation, that should be a huge red flag. I don't know what they paid for this operator, but I mean, you're essentially at this point buying subscribers, if you want to call it that, even though most of them weren't even paying. Besides just looking at the tower sites and the equipment, you should also be looking at their back end. You should be pulling up their QuickBooks and find out their revenue stream. I mean, that's going to correlate directly with how much value you should be paying for this WISP. And I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, I know exactly why this guy wanted to sell. You know, he did everything backwards and wrong and trying to save pennies. And when it came to spending dollars to fix the problems that he made himself by saving pennies, he didn't want to spend the money. And I mean, it didn't help that half of his customers weren't even paying him for his service.
If I had to guess, it's more of a rescue than a buyout. But
yeah, you know, I think there needs to be a TV show put out, WISP Rescue.
There you go.
All right, Jason. These guys were hit at one location These guys were hit at one location 7 times by lightning. That seems a little unbelievable. Some of the biggest issues can be caused by elementary issues. In this case, the power directly without grounding. What do you recommend for grounding and protection against lightning? And what best practices do WISP tend to forget?
Yeah, you know, you go to a site like that, the old adage about lightning striking twice obviously isn't true here. You put equipment on a tower or a pole or a water tower, you're asking for problems. To think you're not going to get struck by lightning is living in bizarro world. So a good ground system, or I should say a bad ground system, is kryptonite to any network, right? So you have to go out to that site and you have to do a physical inspection of the site first. Look around, see if your ground system is intact. I've been out to sites where, you know, you'll see a guy comes along with a weed whacker, cuts a ground line, and all of a sudden the ground system is no longer in the network, no longer part of the network. You go out there and you'll see there new construction has been done, and you'll see a guide wire coming down into a zone that should be free of a guide wire, or someone put something else downstream that's causing problems. So you got to take a good look at the whole physical site and see if you see any issues with the grounding. Then break out your test and measurement equipment. So there's a lot of folks out there that think they know how to use a clamp-on meter to evaluate a ground system. They put the clamp-on meter on the ground rod. They see the number on the screen, and they're like, "Oh, I did my ground test. We're good. Let's go." Nope. Clamp tests a loop, right? So it's putting current into the system and then test that loop. So a clamp-on meter is good to evaluate a ground loop, but it's not what you want to use for resistivity at the site. So to do that, you really need a 3 or a 4-point ground tester groove. So those sound a little complex and challenging, but they're really easy to use once you go through a training class. We can offer those training classes to teach people how to use the ground equipment properly. So NEC says grounding, right? We want 25 ohms or less, but that's for a residence. You go to a tower site, we're shooting for 5 ohms or less. You should not leave that site until you see that reading. If you can't get it off the initial ground rod, you can add additional ground rods. And we have several white papers on our website that teach people how to apply those ground rods and what the best are there for them. So once you get your grounding set up and established, then we get to look at the protection, right? So all those cables going up and down the tower, we're going to make sure we put some form of Ethernet protection on both ends of the Ethernet cable. RF protection is also good. Make sure you're using fast acting, durable surge protection. My prop is better. So that's definitely how I would approach that site. And remember, make this part of your annual inspection, right? You go there for the first time and you build up the site, that's great. You got to make sure you check that ground regularly, annually at minimum. Back to you, Gru.
All right. Are there, other than lightning, are there other types of energy events that people should prepare for?
Oh, good point. So you can have power quality problems come in from the utility as well, right? So we look at the grounding, we look at protection on all of our cables, but what about the back door where the utility comes in, right? So that utility line, that's a big, large gauge wire. It can bring a lot of energy into the building, into the facility, right? So you got to make sure you're protecting the power source as well. Don't rely on whoever was there before to have some sort of surge protection in place that's going to keep your system free from not just lightning events, right? But the utility companies doing all kinds of crazy stuff out there, switching grids that put bad power, bad juju into the system and result in power and signal integrity issues, right? So we need a complete protection package. Anything coming and going from the facility has to have surge protection on it.
As a total tee-up question, for many WISPs, there's a cost consideration to each site. What do you say to those who don't want to make the extra investment in a full grounding solution?
Well, how much does the bucket truck cost, right? You roll somebody out there, you know, we heard about all the problems with customers with downtime. You know, you can check your ground system, add protection. It's not going to break the bank, and you're going to save yourself down the road. When those storms, I hear WISPs all the time saying, oh, a storm rolled through and I had to replace a radio, or I had to climb a tower. It doesn't need to be that way. When storms roll through, we can keep that equipment protected, and we can keep you from climbing that tower. We can keep you from having to roll that truck out there. And that's our goal. Thanks.
Cool. Chris, sounds like the original WISP that was purchased made a lot of serious mistakes. In some cases, people have started out and, you know, they bridged their system instead of routed. They did all sorts of interesting things. What do you suggest as they move forward to try and fix those things, and what sort of procedures would you put in place?
Well, I mean, if I was inheriting this mess, it would be a total teardown. I assume they started business with more of a business mindset of let's just get as many customers. But even then, I mean, they're not even charging half of them. So I say that with a little bit of a grain of salt. I'm a little confused at their choice in frequency. So I'm assuming based on the story that they're using 900 meg and 2.4 for client side because they're doing backhauls in 5 gig, which is how some WISPs start. What the bigger question is, I don't know why they're limiting 900 meg to line of sight within 1 mile and using 2.4 for the difficult further to reach shots and near line of sight. That those should be flipped in my opinion. Plus, I mean, instead of even doing a very simple step of doing a managed data rate in the radio, their way of provisioning subscribers is, I guess, what I would call strategic misalignment. It seems like a truck roll waiting to happen. Yeah, for this case, I mean, you don't even have the tower sites, the saving grace, because if you're securing your tower with nails at the base plate, I wouldn't climb that. I mean, that's terrifying. I mean, someone could have gotten really hurt, and you could have caused a lot of damage just by having that tower there. I mean, one strong storm and that thing is gone.
Well, I'd add, if they're using 5 gig for backhaul, at some point, they really ought to be looking at license links. There will never be more 11 gig frequency and 18 gig frequency than there is today. The FCC is working hard to add point to multi-point frequencies, but they, as far as I heard, they have not said anything about adding license link frequencies. So we're having to push 80 gig a lot further and stuff. So if you can get 11 gig today, get it.
Yeah, even if it's just to hold that frequency. You know,
you can get. I mean, everybody's coming down in price, but you can get relatively inexpensive systems that'll hold you'll be able to legally use and hold you know, that 160 megahertz of spectrum for basically until you need to put a big iron on it. Mark, let's go with our next story.
Oh, hello. Thank you. That was very interesting. Thank you, gentlemen. So, our next story is entitled The Frankenstein Network. Hannibal Lecter was hungry to share his tale with us. Here's his story about growing pains. We started the VIS back in 2008. Like many VIS, or as you say, WISPs, we were a couple of locals with some technical know-how who simply wanted better connectivity for ourselves. Once we set up a couple of APs and got connectivity going, the demand was overwhelming from our neighbors who heard about our internet and wanted a piece of the pie. We experienced astounding growth quickly with no time for long-term planning. And our network requirements were expanding beyond what our current infrastructure could support. We were using APs to support numerous sites and often used an AP as a subscriber site, as a relay to neighbors. But our network was far beyond oversubscribed. We were not keeping up with demand, and our bandwidth was dropping. We also experienced serious latency and jitter issues, not to mention suffering from power and uplink outages regularly. I remember early one morning when one of our subscribers was having issues. I had to go out to the neighbor's location to check out the AP. I made this mistake of not calling ahead because I did not want to wake them. I climbed down to a seriously unhappy grandma. Her teeth apparently still sitting on her bedside table, and some choice words tossed my way as she yelled for Norman Bates to get his gun. Luckily, I was able to talk her down and explain who I was before Norman Bates and his arsenal showed up. In those days, we were still a small team and running around at all hours of the day and night to fix issues and put out fires. As we rushed to get more equipment installed, we were promised by manufacturers that certain equipment would be inoperable and that it would support our needs. Our lack of experience meant we did not have to do proper due diligence, this is my 14th language, sorry here, that we could not manage. In essence, we had three I don't know that word, but I will make it up. We had three separate equipment sets and no idea how to manage it all. Never mind monitor or bill it for it properly. It was a real hodgepodge or Frankenstein network. Our mistakes and downtime were causing serious customer angst, and it would have been a massacre if we didn't get our network under control soon. It took us a good year to finally get everything streamlined, and several more errors in judgment, but we finally got proper backhaul, backup at every site, the right enclosures, redundancy, and a reliable billing system in place, all run by a robust network management tool. Gentlemen,
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten calls from people in similar circumstances. No radio planning, growing pains, hodgepodge network, no idea how to move forward. They're so busy fighting fires that they can't prevent them in the future. It's where you really need to find out what you don't know, and to bring in some folks that can help. There seem to be different breakpoints with WISPs. It's like 0 to 100, you're just trying to figure everything out, and then 100 to 500, you're starting to become a real serious organization. 500 to 1,000 or 1,500, you're putting in place a proper billing system. You're starting to do more and more stuff. You're hiring more employees, and then it goes from there on. But you can always use help. And one of the things that we specialize in is bringing resources to bear. I'm not an expert on everything. No one on our team is. We have people that know more about other things, certain things than others. Matt Kale's great at the electrical part. I'm not. So that's where I would bring in somebody like Superman down there. We have the relationships with the manufacturers. We have the relationships with the consultants. We have the relationships with our customers, and so we can kind of bring all those together and help people when they hit that wall, when they start, when you beat your head against the wall so many times you're bleeding, and it's just, you want the pain to stop and you don't know what to do. That's where, talk to us. Well, we can help walk you through that stuff. Chris, what are your thoughts? Is there a right time for a startup to get a consultant like yourself involved?
Yeah, so what I like about this story is it's the classic WISP start of, I want better connectivity for myself and my community. And it sounds like the need grew far greater than what they all had imagined. So,
you said grew.
That was a pun.
Grew, yes.
Very funny.
We need a pun counter or a dad joke counter in the upper corner. So it sounds like it evolved way past what they had originally thought it was going to be. There is no wrong time to get a consultant involved. The biggest challenge I see with WISP operators is they started out as a 1 or 2 man band shop, and they grew so big, yet they're still the ones configuring radios, climbing towers. And the nature of owning a business is you have to evolve past the point where you're doing all of those things. And whether you bring someone in-house and have an actual employee you trust with, hey, you got to make sure my network stays up and running, or if you get a consultant involved that has done this numerous times to give you the right advice, at the end of the day, you just don't know what you don't know. And people like, CTI with all the right connections, and people like Jason and myself, with our specific expertise, can really help you save a lot of hair pulling and save a lot of time on the back end.
You forgot that he's Superman.
Oh, sorry, Superman.
Got to leave his secret identity secret.
Right.
What about upgrading equipment? Are there any KPIs, anything that you can think of where somebody should be looking at when they should be upgrading their radio gear?
Yeah, I mean, really, if you're experiencing issues with high latency, high jitter, these are all symptoms of potentially oversubscribed, overloaded sectors. It's not always the case, but a main metric I like to look at is frame time utilization. That's pretty standard across the board, where if your AP is at 80, 85+% frame time utilization, you got to start thinking about breaking that down. And that might mean taking the 90-degree sector and breaking it up into a couple 30 or 60-degree horns, or putting up another tower, or overlaying your site with another ring of equipment, potentially even in a different frequency, just to add for more customer acquisition.
Cool. Jason, what about proper cabinets and enclosures at each location? That seems to be pretty basic, but I think a lot of folks kind of tend to overlook it.
Okay, if I wasn't invulnerable, that kind of story would actually hurt me. You know, when you hear about people not having equipment at the site when they need it, when they want it. I mean, Transdector, CTI, we're here to save the day, right? I've got every enclosure under the sun ready to ship same day to have on the site for you to put your stuff in, right? And between the two of us, Gru, myself, we can help you, right? Figure out which enclosure to use. Do you need one that's, you know, got temperature control in it? Do you want a thermostat in there that turns a fan on? Or do you want a thermostat in there that turns a heater on? Do you want convenience outlets in there? Do you want your PoE already set up in the cabinet? Do you want your cabinet black? Do you want it white, depending on what the temperature requirements are? Do you want polycarbonate? Do you want plastic? Do you want metal? All those are available to ship same day, have them on the site to put your equipment in. There's no reason to put your stuff in that other story in a garbage can. That's crazy talk, right? So let's get together. Let's get you the right equipment on.
Thank you. And Chris, for both the last two stories had issues with billing. When do you think it's appropriate to start looking at a professional billing system as opposed to just, you know, QuickBooks or a spreadsheet or something along those lines? And how do they get that in place?
So, I mean, it's really never too early. Having a solid billing system is going to save you, having that set up right away is going to save you a lot of time migrating to that in the future. Plus, you know, it's going to make every step along the way from inventory management to provisioning just that much quicker and simpler. So, I mean, if that's an option, you can afford, you know, a platform like that from day one, I highly recommend it. I mean, between the big four, and I don't want to turn this into a battle of fisticuffs like on Wish Talk about which billing provider is the best, but this, PowerCode, Sonar, and Azatel, I mean, you can't go wrong. And I mean, to get started with them, I mean, reach out to them on their website. I'm pretty sure all of them offer some sort of trial or evaluation, but worst case, just start the conversation. They each do things their own way a little bit, and just by talking with them and finding out the nuances of how they set up and how they manage, you'll find the right one.
Yeah, they all kind of have their own secret sauce. We're really blessed to have about 8 options that are out there that I'm aware of, maybe more than that. So, alongside of that, WISPs need to be prepared to take payments and control process credit cards and ACH payments. Oddly enough, we have a sister company called IPPay, which services over half of the providers in our industry. They're integrated with all the billing companies, and they offer specialized payment processing for WISPs. So let's go ahead with our next story, Mr. Markenstein.
Oh, thank you, Guru. So before we go into this next story, what I wanted to tell you is everyone at home is probably wondering what vampire wears eyeglasses. Well, as you can see from the thickness of these lenses, I am blind as a bat. Anyway, let's move on. Our final story, thank you. Our final story is called Jacob's Ladder. Damien Thorne is a wireless installer for a city in the Midwest. He's got a tale that will surely convert you into believers. Last year, we realized we were not getting the speeds we needed at many of our sites. As a municipality, we have a surveillance system deployed throughout our network. As you probably know, proper surveillance, you need high speeds, both upload and download. And our existing network was just not cutting it. Cutting it. Get it? To begin my saga, I decided to try a product that had been recommended to me for a point-to-point connection. It was an extremely large antenna, over 40 inches. When I got to the site, I started climbing up the old water tower, only to find out that it didn't fit through the access hole. So I had to reclimb to the top with a 300-foot rope, throw down one end, climb back down and tie it to the unit, climb back up and hoist it all the way up to the top of the water tower. Consequently, I had to align two point-to-point antennas that were quite a far distance apart. I learned the hard way that you really need to have a second installer at the site simultaneously, but I tried alone. Now, the thing is, if you adjust one antenna by a mere quarter of an inch, by the time the signal closes the distance to the second antenna, it could be 200 feet off. The slightest modification on one side could mean a huge disparity on the other side. This is getting good. I had to climb up, make a change, climb down, drive over to the other side, climb up, check the connection, make an adjustment, climb down, drive back over to the first side. It sounds like a song. Climb up, check the connection, make an adjustment, climb down, again and again and again. It took me a week, 1 week, and screaming bloody murder before I finally got them perfectly aligned. Next, I had to boost the speed at a site that had a very large pine tree. Only the top of the tree, about 10 feet, is blocking the signal. So when I was convinced that a 900 megahertz non-line of sight solution would easily overcome this problem, I was thrilled. But the promises were made in vain. The 900 megahertz, whose lower frequency wave is supposed to penetrate foliage more easily, just wasn't performing as expected. Don't get me wrong, it was connecting, but at a very slow speed. And to make matters worse, the signal was dropping around 6 times a day. I'm still looking for a better solution. That's what brought me to CTIconnect. I really needed to deal with one vendor that could help me with all my issues and supply all the products and expertise I need. Meanwhile, I needed to offset the equipment on one pole to be able to go around a large tornado siren. I tried to MacGyver a pipe-to-pipe clamp. I was pleased with the result, but then a storm came through, twisted the mast, and knocked out the connection. So I had to move it up another 20 feet. I created a second clamp that was more rigid to be able to handle the wind load so high off the pole. As an installer, I often have to jerry-rig and repair a solution. Often I cross my fingers that it will hold and last. Here's hoping my newest invention will survive the sound vibrations from the tornado siren test next month.
Thank you, Markula. One of our minions from IPPay sent me a note saying that they work with over 50 different software packages. So, thank you. With surveillance, the contributor has some considerations that may be somewhat different than a typical ISP. We run into this with our industrial market customers for public safety, oil and gas, and utilities. Jason, I'm not sure what kind of equipment they were using for the non-line of sight issue. I often recommend KP Performance. Think KP might be a good solution for that application. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. As you pointed out, KP, so Transdector, we're owned by Infinite Electronics, and so is KP Performance, and CTI is a premier distributor of both of those brands. So when I hear a situation like this, I automatically think about our 17.5 dBi Yagi antenna, right? So it's used 10 years now, 900 megahertz. It's probably out there on 75% of the applications, and it will penetrate that tree or shrubbery and give you the signal you need for sure. It would fit through that hole as well. It's only 5 inches wide, and if you're putting it out there in the northern states, it's got a black coating on it. So if it collects some ice, that coating will help melt the ice off. So that'll help on multiple fronts. And it's available for same-day shipping. So I would say call CTI and say, hey, I don't want to take this 40-inch antenna up here. What do you recommend? And we'll figure it out for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issue there was pre-planning and just inexperience. And I'm sure they wouldn't do several of those things again, given their experience. But Chris, what do you think? I'm surprised his 900 meg didn't work with only one tree. What do you think might have gone wrong?
Well, I mean, it took them a week to align it. So anytime I'm brought in on, hey, this isn't working, I start from the bottom and I assume, was it even set up properly? The first thing I would look at is I would go into the GUI of both radios and make sure the power was set accordingly, because I could definitely see him hooking these big 17.5 dBi dish, or sorry, his bigger like 4-foot dishes up and turning down the power down low in order to make a solid connection, and then just taking that equipment out in the field, and you're deploying equipment with the power turned down, very low, which could lead to exactly what he's seeing.
And for the installation, do you have any suggestions about a good installation procedure, radio planning tools, management tools?
Yeah, I mean, if you plan this link out in Link Planner or one of the other manufacturers' link planning utilities, a lot of times they give you the installation azimuth, so that gives you kind of an idea of where to start. Obviously, having a person on each end, especially when it's a longer distance link, because he is right, you move a 1/4 inch to the right, you could be moving 100 feet off the tower. So having 2 people at each site is definitely key.
Cool. Yeah, I love Link Planner, and then there's lots of other good tools out there, Radio Mobile and some of the others.
Yeah.
By the way, I meant to say in the beginning, just assume that I'm talking with an accent like Alex from Telrad, because I could not do it. So I didn't even want to try. But anyway, Jason, do you have any final thoughts?
Wrapping things up here, right? So we'd like to just say thanks to CTI for the opportunity to sit around the fire here. My super friends at CTI are they're great to work with, very knowledgeable, and we love the partnership. We're growing that partnership on a daily basis, right? Transdector, KP, Radio Waves, Polyphaser. What else do we want to add to the CTI family? Bring it on. Let's do it. Thanks.
Chris.
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing that I always find operators undervaluing is their own time. And a lot of times, if you're running into situations and you don't know where to start, it's going to take a lot of time for you to figure out exactly what's going wrong. I'm actually happy to announce an exclusive promotion through CTI where we're doing network health checks. We have an automated utility that captures data and then we do some data massaging and analytics, and then we actually sit down with you and kind of go over the results. So I'm very happy and pleased to push this promotion exclusively with CTI.
Will you wear the outfit if you do you have to wear it if you do the job?
Upon request, I can absolutely do that. I'd also like to thank CTI for having me on, and I'd like to thank my new Thunder buddy, Jason, or Superman, sorry.
Okay. To wrap up from my part, thanks to everybody who helped put this on, Dory Lamar, and thanks Mark for working so hard on getting the accent right. I only heard 2 or 3 different accents that time, so you definitely knocked it down considerably. At CTI, we care deeply about our customers and our partners, like these 2 folks. We see it as more than just a business relationship. We want to really be friends with everyone in the industry we possibly can, and we want to make sure that we treat them properly. We want to make sure that we treat you properly, and it's just, if you do things the right way, the good stuff tends to follow. So thank you very much for your time. I don't see any questions, so unless something pops up here quickly, we'll call it a day and wish you a happy Halloween.
Well, I want to get the last word.
Sorry.
I am the MC of the house. I want to thank you, Gru, aka Jeff, you, Superman, aka Jason, and you, Ted, I believe, aka Chris Catania. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate you all joining us. That I believe I said that, but I could say it again and again and again. And I want to let you know that today's Fireside Chat will be available on YouTube. And when this goes viral, I will be quitting my day job. I am just kidding. Kidding. I love it here at CTI, and I enjoy working with you, gentlemen. Anyway, we'd be very grateful. We will actually have a short survey that we will launch at the end of this webinar. And if you could complete it, we would be utterly grateful for that. These fireside chats are designed to bring you real solutions, experience, and ideas to our community. Please keep an eye out for our November fireside chat. It will be epic. A presidential style debate between 3 of your favorite wireless manufacturers. It's real. It's going to happen, and it's real. Thanks again for joining us today, and do not hesitate to reach out with any questions.
Thanks, guys.